I'd already been researching false flag attacks, not just by our government, but other governments throughout history. The Gulf of Tonkin to get us into Vietnam in '64 that was later declassified to have been staged. And, of course, the USS Liberty between Israel and the Lyndon Baines Johnson administration wanted to get us into full war with Egypt, but the ship survived, became the most decorated ship in U.S. history because of the valiance of the crew. And Operation Ajax, where the CIA and Kermit Roosevelt in '53 overthrew Mohammad Mossadegh, who was a reformist and really pro-West, but he wouldn't give them all the oil. And they used radical Islamists to overthrow him and then put the Shah in and then overthrew the Shah. Over and over again, there's just hundreds and hundreds of historical real case examples of that being done by our government and other governments. And I saw a lot of pre-programming in the news. Oh, Osama bin Laden's going to get us. When he gets us, we need to give up all of our rights and it'll be a new America and we've got to set up this police state. So I saw a lot of pre-programming.
But you called the specifics. You called the specifics of 9/11. I just can't get past that. And I've asked you in public and private, how did you do that? I've never gotten really a straight answer. I doubt I will now. But the fact remains, the incontrovertible fact, the provable fact that you called it, and then they began a campaign against you. And it's not because you're a racist. You've never been a racist or an anti-Semite or a crazy person, actually. You've never spewed hate. But you have, for 30 years, said the foundations of our system are actually kind of fake and rotten. But it was 9/11. That's when they really decided this guy has to be stopped and just basically eliminated the First Amendment to stop you.
Well, just to be clear, it's not that I'm dodging how I knew it. That was 24 years ago, and I remember what I was covering and what I was doing at the time. And everybody's seen the July 25th, where I went into detail, but actually my crew using ChatGPT, scanning through all my old shows, found shows in April and even before that in March, where I get more specific. And I said the CIA is going to fly planes into the World Trade Centers and blame it on bin Laden.
So I just think that's the most amazing fact I've ever heard in my entire life, that you called that. And we can prove it because it's on tape with timestamps. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, okay, Alex Jones is crazy, a hater. Okay, whatever. I don't think that's true. But you called 9/11. And no investigator ever called you to ask you how you called that? How you knew that? Not one.
No.
No one from DOJ. Philip Zelikow of the 9/11 Commission never called you.
No.
Why?
And obviously because certain segments of our intelligence agencies with other foreign intelligence agencies were tracking the supposed hijackers. They were being trained at U.S. military bases. They were being given government money from our government and other governments. They were being protected. Then 2 of their magic passports and all that rubble and hundreds of millions of pieces of paper were found the next day to then connect them to it. It was all laid out. Then the bin Laden family was flown out of the country in the days after, and that was basically shut down in the news. It was covered some locally here in Florida. So I knew that bin Laden had been CIA going back to really the Mujahideen being set up by Zbigniew Brzezinski and Jimmy Carter. Then Reagan took that over. And then they kind of build that as blowback. But even recently, you've seen the U.S. aid information and other documents come out in the Institute for Peace where they're directly paying massive amounts of money to Taliban, to Al-Qaeda, to ISIS, even in the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
And they use them as these proxy armies. So that was well known in the research circles that bin Laden was basically a multinational cutout used by Western intelligence agencies to destabilize areas, but also be a boogeyman. Then you see CNN in a mountain cave magically being able to find him, but the U.S. can't kill him and nobody else can. And I knew that CNN is literally the CIA broadcasting system.
For sure.
Total Mockingbird, thoroughbred. And there were hundreds and hundreds of points that went in, but okay, bin Laden's worked for the CIA. And you got CNN interviewing him and they're all scaring us, saying he's about to attack us. And then I remembered how Ahmad Salam, who was an Egyptian intelligence agency operative working for the FBI and CIA, was hired to build a bomb in the early 90s to blow up the World Trade Center. But then when they said build a real bomb, he started recording them because he started figuring out it was a setup. And then he had that press conference where he played it. And I interviewed him a few times where the FBI said, no, just go ahead and let it go forward. And so you start adding all that together. They'd already tried to hit the World Trade Center before. The World Trade Center had a lot of issues in it with asbestos and also some of the structural issues. So they were already wanting to have a plan to get rid of it. And then you have the CIA and FBI in the Solomon Brothers building, Building 7, the 47-story skyscraper. You have that right next door. So I looked at all of it and I thought, where would the new Pearl Harbor be? And the year before, in the Project for American Century, headed up by Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney wrote in there that we need a new Pearl Harbor event to launch the Pax Americana, but it wasn't an American empire of freedom and liberty and justice like Trump's trying to, launch. It was a globalist empire of military enforcement and tyranny. And so there was a lot of other data points that went into it. Cheney also writes in that same document, we need to look at race-specific bioweapons to have control and bring in our power. And that was actually picked up in the newspapers.
Okay, so these are not minor issues. These are like the biggest things happening in the world, the most important things happening in the world. And the end of one system, ushering in of a new system, millions in the end died because of all of this, millions. And you're on like cable access in Texas figuring this out. Like, where is everybody else? I don't understand. Like, I worked at CNN at the time. And we had as you said, Peter Bergen went and interviewed Bin Laden. I'm not attacking Peter Bergen, but like, how come you were the only one who figured this out?
Yeah, by that time, I started out in 94 as a guest on Access TV and had my own show by 95, but I was on local talk radio. I just started getting, I've been syndicated a few years then, but I mean, you're right. I was on Access TV as well, and that's where
you were like way out on the fringe, and all the people at the very center of our business, journalism, like they didn't see or didn't talk publicly about any of this, none of this.
Well, I saw Gary Hart on with another guest.
Gary Hart, the former presidential candidate, senator from Colorado.
I think it was the Hart-Rubin Commission.
Yeah.
I saw him in Congress with testimony earlier that year, and also saw him on, I believe it was CNN, or maybe it was Chris Matthews, MSNBC. But the clip's famous. And they say the world's about to change. There's about to be big things happening, big attacks.
When was this?
It was in early July.
It was before 9/11.
Yes, and they were very specific. Somebody should find that clip, can crowdsource that, and that was the final catalyst because they were basically telling the establishment, very thinly veiled, what was about to go on. So I sat back, I looked at it. And I thought years later, how did I come up with that? Because I don't just say a bunch of stuff, then most of it doesn't come true. When I'm very specific on predictions, and almost all of them have come true. I thought that it was the spinoff of the X-Files, and I wasn't even an X-Files fan, rarely watched it, called The Lone Gunman, that it turns out had come out in the spring of 2001 that I didn't even learn about because there wasn't, Facebook and Twitter and X back then. So if you didn't watch those entertainment shows, you didn't know about it. And then 6 months or so after 9/11, listeners start saying, have you seen this? And I had listeners send me VHS recordings off Fox TV of this episode where a criminal group in the U.S. government hijacks a jumbo jet in New York to fly it in the World Trade Center to blame it on a Central Asian terrorist so that they have a pretext to take over domestically with a police state and launch wars in the Middle East.
Wait, this was on the X-Files?
Yes, this was on the X-Files. And so later I thought maybe I got it from that. But then we found tapes even earlier, a month before that came out, where I had put it together on the radio. But